friends, and welcome to a brand new M&M Hour with our dear friend Mandy Slutzker. Hi, Mandy.
Hi, how are you doing?
I am good. For those of you who are watching the video, you'll notice two things. First of all, my background is totally different because in Northeast PA, the sun normally doesn't come out in the winter, but today she came out and she was blinding me. And so I had to pivot a little bit. So you can see my Christmas tree. There's a picture of me with my grandpa when I was really little, so you can enjoy that. And Mandy, tell everyone where you are.
I'm in my dad's basement in Minnesota. It's very, there's a lot of wood.
It's a beautiful house. And what you get to look at right now, because again, in Minnesota, it's, you get a lot of winter there. You're looking at the snow.
Yes, it is coming down. Beautiful.
How much are you guys supposed to get?
A lot. I mean, I thought it was going to be 3 inches, but we'll see.
Yeah. We talked about this a little bit on your podcast. So I'll just say at the top of the hour, check out Mandy's podcast, Is This Real Life with Mandy Slutzker, because we talked about a lot of really fun things. We talked about Southern Charm, Salt Lake City. We did talk about Potomac. But today on this podcast, we're going to talk about Southern Charm and Salt Lake City. You also were saying that you came to Minnesota without boots, and I just laughed at you. As a Midwesterner, I'm like, girl, after August, you gotta have winter gear.
I know. I don't know what I was thinking. I've been walking around in my luckily rainproof Hokas. Or waterproof Hokas. So, yeah, we'll see. I'm going to put, we have ice grippers. So I think I'm going to go out with ice grippers with Joyce after recording this with Stassi and let her play around in the snow.
That's really sweet. I also just imagine you wearing those. What are they like? Those tennis rackets that you put on your feet. They're called something.
Snowshoeing.
Yeah. I picture you all snowshoeing and just Stassi running around, and you're just so cute.
That would be fun if there was a little more snow. I feel like you need I don't know, maybe a foot of snow to feel like good snowshoeing because you sink a little.
Yeah, probably. So
snowshoeing is hard, man. As someone who has very weak hip flexors, it every time it kills me.
It's depending on how, if it's hard or soft or squishy, you just never know. So for anyone who's Mrs. Snow, I hope you'd enjoyed this little, recap of snow. And, I have to say, before we move on, I am shocked because in Northeast PA, it was supposed to snow today, but now it is very sunny. It's very cold, but it's very sunny. I love snow when it's nice and white, and then it just gets dirty and gross, and it's time for it to go. But the first couple times, it's beautiful. So, Mandy, let us get into it because, boy, do we have a lot to talk about. Let's start with Salt Lake City because, on your podcast, we oh my gosh, we talked about so much with Meredith and things like that. So before I get into the things that I noticed, what are some of the things from Salt Lake that you noticed or that stood out to you?
Just Meredith being so defiant in her view of what happened. It felt very Trumpian or actually royal family, maybe you know what I mean? It felt very what do they say? Never explain, never. There's a phrase with the royal family, and it's
I don't know what it is, but I know what you mean.
Yeah,
basically, don't
it's something that rhymes with explain and then never explain. And so it's you just completely ignore what is being discussed and just pivot, and you're that's not what happened or whatever it is, or don't comment on it. And her narrative is just very off compared to everyone else's, and you can tell that Lisa is trying to support Meredith by taking her narrative, because the thing that she always does is she wants Meredith to support her. And so she's okay, I'm going to go hard. I'm going to go to bat for Meredith. And now she has to she'll owe me kind of a thing is how I feel Lisa is going through it. And so it's just wild seeing someone like Mary be no, we were there, honey. It's not really what happened. So all of that was very odd. And I appreciated watching Angie's kind of trying to figure out the dynamics of what's going on. It was very clear that Whitney and Heather had the strongest views. And I was proud of seeing Heather say what she's really thinking even though it was like against her friend. Like, I think she's just like, wow, Meredith and Lisa have taken things too far. I am going to just say exactly what I'm thinking. So with regards to that scene at Walter's, RIP, I think he is no longer with us. But it was just a very odd thing. And then she's just like, how do you confront someone who just like will not say what happened?
Right. And that was so interesting to me because we talked a lot about addiction on your pod, and we're going to talk about that here. But with addiction, you see a lot of denial, like severe denial and minimization. And you can see denial and minimization outside of addiction for sure. But I think you're right, is that they're all just trying to break through Meredith's denial. There's everyone else's side, there's Meredith's side, and then somewhere in the middle is the reality of it. And I think that the reality is that Meredith did much more than she said or she thought or whatever happened. I mean, that doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure it out. One thing I noticed that I wanted to get your thoughts on is it seems like I like looking sociologically at different franchises. Like Beverly Hills, for example, they don't talk about anything. It's like a secret club. It's very annoying. But there are some franchises like Potomac, for example, which I've been loving, where their mores and the underlying rules of the group are, we're going to call you on stuff, we're going to roast you, and then we're going to move on and have a kiki. And all the different franchises do this different. But what I feel like Heather might be doing, want to hear your thoughts on this, is that I think Heather wants to make their franchise great. I think she does. I think she's very motivated to make Salt Lake great, which it has been. And they know that fans do not like Meredith and Lisa, that kind of behavior, where it's just like, you're a loyal drone to the other person, no matter, because like in real friendship, you have to tell your friend when they're wrong. Like if you behaved badly towards someone, I'd be like, Mandy, what is happening? That is so unlike you. Like what? That's part of what it means to be a good friend and to love someone. Like when my husband screws up, I'm like, buddy, what happened? And same thing with me. But I think Heather, she said something last episode where she's like, we are not going to do this anymore. We are going to call people out. We are going to take accountability and we are going to move on. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that did strike me because it felt like she had been ignoring a lot of things that Lisa was doing in particular because she wanted Lisa to like her and she thought Lisa was the cool girl. And Lisa's the one that apparently I don't know who said it, but they cast around Lisa, or she was the one that threw all the women out and the names, whatever. And so they all feel sort of indebted to her. But she does stuff where she shares things about them. She digs up stuff, or she has other people dig up stuff and put it out. And it was interesting to watch Heather call it out, you know?
Yes. I feel that Heather this season is really coming into her own. And I also think that because of everything Heather's doing, she did that amazing documentary about surviving Mormonism. Did you watch that?
I've seen parts of it. I haven't seen the full thing.
I'm going to cover it with Recap Rodeo in a couple of weeks because there's a lot to say about it. But I think that Heather is trying to become a voice for the marginalized and the traumatized, and she's trying to be a leader. And part of being a leader means owning your shit, and you demand that of other people. And I feel like this group, they're kind of saying to Lisa and Meredith, like, well, if you want to be in this group, you better get on board. Wild Whitney Rose is going to call you out. Heather's going to call you out. Mary does it in such an astounding way, Mandy. It's like, I cannot emphasize enough how wild it is to watch Mary use these skills that are just like upper level, emotionally mature skills to say to someone, I love you and you're wrong. I love you and support you and you're wrong. And what you did wasn't okay. And so that tells me that Mary has been profoundly changed by Robert Jr.'s addiction, because those are just good boundaries and not co-signing bullshit. which I appreciate.
Yeah, Mary continues to astound me. People at BravoCon said that she was one of the kindest and most real people that they met, which was really interesting. Casey and Danielle from Bitch Sesh, who led the panel for Salt Lake, said that when they met Mary, Mary thanked them for being there and that no one else had even acknowledged that it takes work to work at BravoCon and prepare for a panel and, that kind of a thing. They were just like, wow, and she looked them in the eyes, thank you for being here.
That is so interesting.
Yeah. They said they felt like she was very level-headed and, not this kooky, I'm sure, I know she had a lot of kooky things where she didn't want people touching her hair in photos, and stuff, or standing too close to her during the pictures. Because she's got her whatever germ and, I don't blame her. And
I don't blame her either. Also, can I just say justice for don't touch people's hair. Nobody likes that.
No, but when you put your arm and it the hair might kind of be down, it's kind of hard to avoid the hair, I think. I don't think anyone's touching her hair like this.
Can I touch it? Don't do that.
Yeah, no, I think, but it's interesting to hear who had good experiences with folks at BravoCon or who really felt like the women were, because a lot of times they're kind, but they're kind of, it's all about them. And they just felt with Mary, it wasn't just all about her. And that's interesting. It's also very interesting watching everything going on with Robert Jr. I thought that would be really hard for her to be at BravoCon while the information came out about him getting arrested again, breaking into his estranged wife's parents' house. It's frightening stuff. And I think if we were looking at it from the estranged wife's point of view, we would say that was, abusive behavior and stalking and that kind of stuff. So I really hope he gets the help that he needs. But she is he has to make the choice to get better. It feels like she really understands and is loving, and so she can show so much love, but also have firm boundaries, which just so few people are able to do well.
That's 1,000% correct, because when I was working in inpatient rehab, we would have the family education days because, you have to be educated about addiction, period. And so as a family member, there's the saying, you don't want to love your family member to death. Because sometimes setting boundaries with a loved one who's an addict, it feels counterintuitive. It feels counterintuitive to say, you have to get out of my house, or you're not welcome if you're using. That feels not like it's not loving. But in reality, it is the most loving act to refuse to love your loved one to death. And to set those boundaries, I just have to say, for a mother who loves her son, to be able to do that with such calm, being so centered and saying, I love you and this behavior needs to change. Chef's kiss for Mary. I think it's brave. I think that it's hard. And I think that it's humbled her to a point where, Mary's quirkiness before, to me, what I didn't like is there was some delusional stuff around the church and around some of her behaviors. Now I don't see that as much. I see a Mary whose feet are grounded, who understands what Robert's going through, who understands what her role is, and who's willing to say, because that's the other thing. A lot of family members, they don't want to look at what our role is in this, right? They want to blame the addict. But addiction is a family disease. And the reason why we say that is because it doesn't exist in a vacuum. I'm just very impressed with Mary week after week. And I think that I'm just cheering her on, and I'm cheering Robert on because, addiction, it is a terrible disease, and relapse is a part of recovery. That's one of the really important things that I always want people to know. But I really am cheering him on to find his way back to recovery. I really hope that he does, because I think it's, we talked a little bit about this on yours, and we'll talk a little bit more when we get to Craig and Southern Charm. I think it's just addiction is what happens when we exceed our threshold for pain. Sometimes we don't know what to do with that. So, and it makes me bummed out to even have to think about watching that, the docuseries in January, about the cult stuff and all that.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see. I'm waiting for some cold hard facts rather than, you know, people, I don't know. Thus far, I haven't seen anything that is like cold, hard proof about the church and cults. Again, I'm also no expert in churches or cults. So I'm probably not the best person to judge. But I feel like sometimes they like to come up with these sort of salacious, yeah. And it's like until there's like charges, until there's like some sort of legal thing, that comes through, I'm just like, okay, well, we don't have anything. There's no there yet.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I'm just nervous because I'm like, oh, I love Mary so much now. I was so anti-Mary, and now I love Mary, and I just want, I want to see the best in her and for Robert and all of that. But I guess TBD. What else do you feel like stood out to you?
It was really interesting to watch Bronwyn, her daughter Gwen, and her mom, who she calls Muzzy, together making bonsais. I thought that was really interesting. Gwen seems like such a teenager. You know what I mean? Like she's just like ready to kind of break free, to be away from her mom. And her mom is just like not ready to let go. And then Muzzy also, I think, wants to have a little bit of her own life and move out. And to see Bronwyn just, she's not ready for it. But the way that she's explaining how she feels, I thought was really interesting. Like she's not being passive aggressive. She's just saying, this is how I feel right now. And I think Gwen and Muzzy are like, we get it. We're still leaving. You know what I mean? And
Right.
Yeah. And it's like everyone's valid in their feelings. Right. And then to see Britani and Olivia go to family therapy and Britani take a lot of accountability and say, like, I don't know why I did what I did. I want to make sure that never happens again. And then to see Olivia, Britani wasn't trying to change the narrative when Olivia was saying, things were good until they weren't, and you abandoned me, and you weren't around, and you prioritized your marriage, your second marriage, all this stuff. And she's like, yeah, I did that.
Yeah, I agree. The way that Britani let her have her voice, that's also a very important skill that I think some mothers would have trouble with, right? Some parents who have hurt their children, it's hard to give them the space to say and to listen.
Kelly Dodd,
what?
Maybe? I was like, I didn't bring it up on mine, but oh my God.
All right, let's bring that up, shall we? We'll get into this, but I think this is a good time to insert that insanity. Would you like to share with everyone a little bit of what happened, what we're talking about?
So I don't know all the facts, but it sounds like Kelly left a voicemail that was meant for Jolie, just completely berating her and being like, I did all of these things for you. I housed you. I paid for your school. All this, like things that like a parent does,
Which is their literal job, by the way.
Yeah. And claiming that Jolie is a spoiled brat. And it's just the level of yelling and screaming felt like there's no justification whatsoever. Like, it doesn't matter what Jolie did or didn't do. Like, there is just no okay with like how Kelly is doing that. It made me sad because I know that Kelly is also contributed to the estrangement of her husband and his daughters. So They were, on speaking terms. They would visit each other. And when Kelly came into the picture, things suddenly went left and they no longer have a relationship with their father. So for those two girls not to have a relationship with Kelly and Rick, and then for Jolie to not have a relationship with Kelly and Rick, it seems like the problem is Kelly and Rick. And now Kelly is trying to say that she's going to like share the truth eventually, and we're all going to feel so bad. And it's like, girl, you have no idea. Like you're talking about a child who's like 20, 21, and you're saying for 15 years she lived off me or something. It's like, she was a minor for the majority of that time. Right. What on earth?
When parents make the decision to have children, that is their decision. Having children is not about their ego. And this is where we come into problems. You can tell the parents who have children because they love them and they want to. And then you could tell the people who have children, and I think this can still be an older generation thing, but I know it's universal. is that they have children so that they can be taken care of in their older age, or they can say, well, I sacrificed this for you, so you owe me, right? They weaponize what it is to be a parent. And those parents, I can't stand, because you made the decision and you are putting things on your child that is not theirs to have. And I listened to this voicemail. I tried to repost it, but sometimes I'm not really technologically savvy. But so essentially what Kelly was saying, and by the way, it was a voicemail. So Jolie blocked Kelly Dodd, and Kelly said, I'm recording this, and sent it to Jolie's friend and said, show this to Jolie. That's how psycho Kelly Dodd is, that she was like, I want my child who's blocked me, right? Which is a boundary, which shows me that Jolie is probably healthy. And I'm going to bust through her boundary. Basically, what she said was, I have videos of you when you were throwing fits, which, by the way, kids are supposed to misbehave. Kids are supposed to make mistakes, get in trouble, lie, do things. That's their job. Developmentally, it's appropriate. And parents are supposed to love them anyway. But what Kelly Dodd does is she took her daughter's worst moments and threatened to weaponize them to make her feel bad and to try to get the world, who, by the way, no one cares about Kelly and Rick. No one cares. To try to get people to be on her side. The delusion, the narcissism, the entitlement, the gaslighting. It's so insane.
But also, where do you think Jolie learned that behavior? Like, I don't think it's okay for teenagers to throw fits the way that it sounds like Jolie did. But, it's also, the response isn't what Kelly did. You know what I'm saying? Like, Jolie may have crossed a boundary as a child for how she was treating her mother. But also, where do you think she learned that behavior of, like, allegedly throwing car keys at Kelly's face? Where do you think she learned this? And yeah, it's shocking that she could act like, I did all these things for you and you're ungrateful, is just not the way to show up in a parent-child relationship. It's not a way to show up in a friendship. I hate friends that will, like, bring up, like, I did this for you. It's like, okay, and now I owe you,
Let me
like,
be clear. If you are doing something for someone, Tamara Judge does this a lot. If you're doing something for someone only to hold it over their head later, that is manipulation, pure and simple. 100%. Listen, you're right. In terms of, I'm not saying Jolie's behavior was okay, but when you're 15, sometimes you do act out or whatever. We learn how to do everything based on what we get from our parents, right? We learn how to choose partners. We learn how to communicate. We learn how to manage conflict. So this child isn't just doing that of her own volition. To your point, she is learning that we've seen Kelly react, right? When she's in conflicts, how does Kelly act? She calls people a cunt. She screams, she threatens, she does all of these things. And then what parents like her want to do is they wash their hands of it and they say, well, I don't know where she got that from. Bitch, she got it from you. You gave her the playbook and then she played it and you didn't like it. So with kids, it's not, there was this old saying, do as I say, not as I do. Mm-hmm. Kids, we now know, learn through modeling. That's it. That we model for them how to behave, how to handle all this other stuff. You get what I'm saying. So I just think that Kelly Dodd is a human troll. I think that she should be embarrassed, but she isn't.
Yeah, I mean, she has no shame. And the fact that she's estranged from her brother and she had issues with her mom, like, she does not have people in her life that just doesn't feel like she has healthy relationships in general. Even with Rick, it feels very codependent. Like, they do absolutely everything together. She's kind of come in and acted as if she was a parent to the other kids. Like, it's just, all of it is just, she's so overbearing and she's so nasty. And I do find it interesting that she's the one also that's speaking up for Meghan King Edmonds and saying, like, Meghan loves her kids and, all this stuff. Meghan had, I guess, physical custody of her children taken away from her. And I think maybe she'll get it back eventually. because she allegedly was giving one of her children a prescription controlled substance medication that he was not prescribed, and Child Protective Services was called by the school. And so many people online are like, oh, Megan is the, one that's being abused by her ex, Jim, because we've watched Jim. This was also 10 years ago that we watched, her and her ex-husband engage, and we chose her side. That was a long time ago. And it's not like her ex or his new wife are the ones that called Child Protective Services. Like, at some point, you have to accept that, like, maybe she did something she shouldn't have been doing. And maybe this is a wake-up call for how she should, get her act together to be able to regain custody of her children. And, I don't want to seem like I'm always choosing the side of like the government or whatever, but it's like, I don't know. It takes a lot to remove a child from a family home. It's,
Well, as someone who is a mandated reporter, and I've had to make reports on people, it's a terrible feeling. It's a terrible job. It's a terrible position. But at the end of the day, what we're talking about is whatever parents feel that they're doing is right, children need to be protected, because unfortunately, a lot of times parents make the wrong decisions. And I do think people are quick to support Megan because of, the narc. They call Jim a narc, which stands for narcissist. Like, well, he's a narcissist.
Oh.
And it's like, listen, yeah, I know you.
I'm sorry. I thought it was like, I just like thought like, oh, he like told on her to.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
Narc meaning like narcissistic, like abuser. And I think that it's a case of two things can be true. I think Jim was pretty terrible, but
awful.
I also think that Megan chooses to make decisions after that relationship has ended that have been questionable. And I talked about this I had Mary Payne on my pod, and we talked about this a little bit, which is that stimulant medication, and I know we're going off a little bit, but stimulant medication can be life-saving for children who have ADHD, who have hyperactivity. It kind of serves the opposite, right? It helps someone who's hyperactive. It helps them focus calm. And, the neurodivergence, it helps them shift. But for kids who don't need that, it can cause a litany of physical and mental problems. And so I just think there's such hubris in like, for example, I'm a therapist, right? I would never have a child and be like, oh, I know what this child needs and I'm just going to give them medication. We always have to make sure we're giving ourselves and our children proper assessments, because you're too close to the situation. Like when my nieces have issues, I'm like, I love you too much. I'm not partial here. I can't, I'm your aunt. I'm not your therapist. But going back to Kelly Dodd, I just think that the reason why she was kicked off of TV is because she is so emotionally volatile. I mean, she is just not only emotionally volatile, she is straight up, how do I say this? There's such narcissistic traits and tendencies that it is literally just all about her. Like when your child reacts or has an issue, it's like, well, that wounds me. Well, why do you think they're acting like, you know what I mean? So I just feel like there's a lot of narcissism. There's a lot of entitlement. There's a lot of, you should just do what I say. And I don't know. What a mess.
She's also just not enjoyable to watch. And I think people were over it. She couldn't form good relationships with the other members of the cast because she couldn't. People like her can't have meaningful relationships. It's always about her at the end of the day. And so if you're not able to watch her get along with anyone on the show and she's so volatile and not fun to watch, then you remove her and the show goes on and it's great anyhow. So all of it's really yucky. And, I know like we're not parents here, right? And so it's like very easy to judge, especially when someone has a kid that's like throwing a tantrum, like how the parent reacts. Like I would be different. You don't know until you're in the situation, but to go be so public, and then people are like, oh, Jolie released I don't know who released, I don't know anything. All I know is that was Kelly's voice on that voicemail. And what she was doing was so egregious that it like, I permanently judge her for it. Like, I'm like, I always was like, oh, well, at least she has Jolie, and Jolie seems so level-headed. We would watch Jolie on the show, and like her parents would just be fighting, and she was just like making, getting by. And it also seems like a lot of the housewives' kids are a lot more like level, and I don't know what the term is, but when you're like adult before you're an adult, where you're like
It's
the
called
adult and
parentification.
yeah,
So
a lot of them have
parentification,
that.
they do, is when children, and so let's use this to go back to the Olivia and Britani
Yeah.
therapy session. Because what parentification is, we see this with Britani and Olivia. And by the way, for those of you watching this on video, the sun has now shifted and it's back in my
I was like,
face.
how
It's
did
like
it get?
heat-seeking missile. I cannot. This has been so. I'm sorry. You're just looking at a big sun face, and Mandy looks normal and beautiful. And if you're listening to this, just ignore this because I am so exasperated. I cannot. I'm like, the one day it's sunny here. But anyway, parentification is when a child needs to take on the responsibilities of an adult, of a parent. So emotionally, physically, it can be things like cooking and cleaning the house, but it can also be emotional. So Britani, in the therapy session, I'll let you know what Olivia shared in case you didn't listen to it. Olivia so bravely took the reins and explained to the therapist like what was going on. And she said that things were good until she divorced my dad. We weren't her priority when she got remarried. She became more of a mom to my step siblings so that she could be loved more. And when I heard Olivia say that, and I heard her talk so eloquently, it broke my heart, but it tells me that Olivia has been parentified, meaning Britani emotionally abandoned her children for 7 years, just completely emotionally abandoned them. Like, you're on your own, fend for yourself. I don't know what to tell you. I can't help you solve your problems. And so when children are brought up in that environment, they seem more mature and they seem more capable because they've had to be. Kids like Olivia, if they didn't solve their own problems, they just would be screwed. So it tells me that that poor little thing has had to fend for herself. She's been parentified. She's had to solve her own problems because of the emotional neglect. And further, she's had to think about this so much that she understands it with an insight that to me, you'd only get as a therapist. Like, how would that kid know, oh, she did it so that the stepdad would love her?
I bet she's been in therapy. I bet her dad helped her get into therapy so that she could deal with the fact that the mom abandoned her and her sister. Because
I hope.
If I was the other parent, I don't know what I would do. You can't, like, why doesn't mom love me? Why doesn't mom want to be with me? Why is she ignoring me? You don't know what to say to that. So, I think it sounds like she's already done some therapy just based on how she talks about all of it.
Sure. I mean, that would make sense. I say this all the time, but it's so true. When a child doesn't get the love that they need from a parent, they don't stop loving the parent, they stop loving themselves. And to me, in real time, we see this generational poison of that when Britani says she doesn't feel worthy. And then Olivia says she feels unworthy, she feels unlovable, and she feels that people will leave her. I'm telling you, Mandy, I cried real tears. I was so sad for her. This is how the poison trickles down from generation to generation, right? Britani's mom probably behaved similar ways. And then that went down to Britani. And then this went down to Olivia. And what it takes is, I call Olivia a cycle breaker. And a cycle breaker is someone who is brave enough to feel all the generational wounds, the poison, the trauma, and to say, that's it. This stops with me. And now, cycle breakers, you can't necessarily always put the brakes on it, but you can really slow it down or dilute it, depending on how you look at it. And I think that Olivia is brave. I think that it's always the people who feel like they're unworthy and unlovable who are usually just the best humans on the planet. And so I hope that Britani and Olivia are able to find their worth, like, internally, But the last thing I'll say is that Brittany was like, well, I'm never going to put myself in a cage to prevent me from being a mom. And you know what I wrote down? She is in a cage and its name is Jared.
Mm.
And she doesn't have the insight and awareness because she doesn't do therapy. Brittany uses men just like Craig uses alcohol. People use things like love. I do believe that Brittany has kind of a love and a relationship addiction. And I think that she does not realize how she's already in that cage named Jared and it's hurting her daughter.
Yeah, it's the stuff with Jared is so annoying. It's like the thing that makes me really dislike Brittany because it's so, just stop. Just stop. This is not fun for us to watch. This is not like good for you. It is not good for your children. Just stop it. Like we don't want to be on this, Ferris wheel or merry-go-round or whatever it is with you. We want to get off the ride. And she cannot get off that ride. And I wish he would be mature enough to stop it as well. But he is just as bad as she is. And he's just as addicted to the nonsense. And I think he's addicted to the fame. I think now that she is on the show and it's horrible. It's like, what are you doing? You didn't like her when she wasn't on the show, but now whenever cameras are around, you'll show up.
Boom. That is what it's about for Jared. He is so thirsty. I literally believe that outside of the Salt Lake City limits, he would be undateable. Absolutely undateable. But he has picked the perfect place because his name means something there, which also is like so ridiculous to me. A, and B, he has his pick of women like Brittany, where they feel so... Listen, what I'm saying is that men like Jared, Salt Lake City can be a hunting ground for women who feel so bad about themselves that he knows he can just do whatever he wants. It's a literal hunting ground for a narcissistic, self-important fame whore.
Yeah.
Basically. Going back to Bronwyn, Gwen, and Muzzy, which I find it so interesting that her name is Muzzy because she needs a muzzle sometimes. And I'm like, I wonder if that's part of the etiology of the name. But so we see the generational trauma with Britani and Olivia, and then we see it with Bronwyn, Gwen, and Muzzy, so what happened, I believe, is that Muzzy has a lot of narcissistic traits and tendencies. And I think she, as a mom, did not give Bronwyn the love that she needed, which is why Bronwyn chooses Todd. Because Todd also doesn't give her the love that she needs. I think that Bronwyn has had to convince people to love her whole life, and she's really used to that. And I think that's why she chose Todd, and I think that's why she stays with Todd. But Muzzy said one thing that really was like a red flag. Muzzy jokes, I think Todd's going to get rid of you. And what's so interesting is saying this to Bronwyn after what Todd did, that's a choice.
I don't know that she knows, though, that what Todd did. I wouldn't assume that Muzzy knows. Even, I'm not trying to defend Muzzy because I think she's awful and says horrible things to Bronwyn. I think that, we know it, but we can't assume everyone else knows what's happening in real time.
Well, here's why I assume she does know. They live together. And I thought that Bronwyn had a conversation with her mom about what happened. But do you think Muzzy,
maybe I missed it.
And maybe she didn't, but here's my other thing. So they all live together. You know that Bronwyn and Todd have been talking about this. Todd was gone for a couple days. Bronwyn tells her mom everything, and it was all over the news. Do you think for 1 second she didn't? I don't know. Maybe you're right, and maybe I'm not, but it seemed like a choice to me that really annoyed me.
Yeah. I mean, she's like, don't threaten me with a good time. I mean, it just feels like it's easy to judge when you're not in the relationship, but sure. Bronwyn really needs to learn how to live on her own and love herself without her daughter or her husband or her mother telling her anything. It's like she said she was never on her own, right? She went to college and then she got pregnant and then she had a baby. And so she was always with Gwen and Gwen loved her, right? But then Gwen's getting older and isn't able to give her the kind of love that she is seeking because she's a child and because she is trying to leave the nest. And Bronwyn just needs to heal herself. And I think she can. I think she's aware that there is an issue. Mm-hmm. And I hope she's able to maybe be the one that breaks the cycle. And her and Gwen can have a good, so it seems like they have a decent relationship. And,
Yep.
Move forward.
The one thing that I'll say as we finish, because I know we got to go on to Southern Charm, is that the most powerful gift we can give ourselves when we did not receive the love we needed from people who were supposed to love us is loving ourselves, is having our back, is getting to know ourselves and feeling so comfortable in our skin that we are never alone again. And I can tell you I've done it. And I can tell you it's a very tough process. It feels very lonely. It feels like it could kill you. But if you can get to the other side of it, there is power. There is empowerment. There is self-love. There is something that no one can ever take away from you. But I think before you're on the other side of it, it feels really scary. And I do think that Bronwyn needs to find out who she is. She needs to get to know Bronwyn and love Bronwyn and not get the love from Muzzy or from Todd or from the housewives or the fans. Because I think that's the other thing that is kind of delaying Bronwyn's ability to do that is the fans provide a lot of love that can take the place, I think, for her of a parent. But the problem is nothing can ever take that place. It's just temporary. All right. Well, let us move on to Babadoo, Southern Charm. I love me some Southern Charm. So the one thing we definitely have to talk about is Craig and his drinking and his addiction. We talked about this a bunch on your podcast, but one thing you brought up is that Craig said he never has a healthy relationship with alcohol when he's single, which is, so can you share what your kind of thought on that was? Because I think that was spot on.
Yeah, it just seems that he kind of treats his girlfriend as though they're responsible for his drinking. And so when he's with the girlfriend, they manage his drinking and tell him when he can and can't, or they'll keep him at home so he's not going out to bars. But then when he's single, all bets are off. There's no one gatekeeping. There's no excuse. I think he uses having a girlfriend as an excuse to not go out to bars when really the issue is that he can't control himself.
Right. Because do you remember on the beach with Austen last year, he was crying and he was like, I'm trying not to be an alcoholic or an addict, or I forget whatever he said. And he wasn't trying because he wanted to. He was trying because Paige was like, you've got to get a hold of this. We saw a flashback this week of Craig talking to Paige when they were together, and there was an event, an incident. He got drunk and something happened, and she said, I will leave with the kids in the night. And so this all goes to show that Craig has an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. He's admitted it. He said it. Anyone with observational skills can observe it. But I wanted to explain a little bit. There are 5 stages of motivation. The only real reason people change is because they want to and they're ready to. They're self-motivated. Like people come into rehab and they're motivated by external sources. For example, they're court ordered, or if they don't get sober, they'll go to jail. And a lot of times, guess what? That doesn't work either because it has to be internal motivation. I've seen people be like, well, you'll have to go to jail. And they'll be like, oh, too bad. And then they just go back. What do they care? You can get drugs in jail too, and alcohol and all that. So what I'll say really quickly is there's 5 stages of motivation. That's pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance. Now, currently people are saying there's another stage and it's relapse, because what happens with humans is we don't change and then stay changed forever, right? Situations happen, our brains change, our environments change. And it leads us to kind of go back to the same behavior. One thing I can tell you as a therapist is you have to be vigilant when you change behavior, because I'll speak for myself. I swear to you, I have these neural pathways where I'll change something and then I'll go back to what I call my factory default setting, which is no good. And I'm like, Melissa, we got to change this. Come on. But that takes a lot of awareness, a lot of insight, and a lot of motivation. So what I see with Craig is that, number one, he's just grieving. He's hurting. He's grieving the loss of his relationship with Paige, who he thought was going to be forever, which, he's just got to get over that. I mean, get over it, meaning like you said on your pod, it's ridiculous to say, well, she didn't want to be in the relationship with anymore, therefore she's the villain. No one's the villain. These things happen. The real travesty would be to stay together forever and not be happy.
I think when he was saying she made me the villain because she had to have one in her narrative, he's really speaking about himself. Like he needed her to be the villain. She didn't need a villain. She left. And she has not spoken about him except for when she's been asked. And she's moved on. And he, I will say, though, that this was filmed many months ago. And so we're seeing where he was like 6 months ago, not where he is today. So I don't know where he is today. But, as of however many months ago, it's clear that he, is still having a hard time. I do have a question for you because 2 seasons ago, we were talking about Shep and Shep's drinking and drug issue. And it seems like Shep has basically continued drinking, but to a lesser degree. He's basically like, even seen him at BravoCon this time, like he was with it. From what I've heard, last BravoCon was the real big issue where he was just blacked out the entire time.
Well, but this year, remember, there was that big issue where he was super drunk and he was filmed. He was like talking shit about Paige.
Oh my God. Yes. Yes.
There were incidents.
There were incidents. Okay. Where
he hasn't.
Yeah, he hasn't, but he does seem to have made some changes to his like health and well-being where he's exercising more, eating better. Like he's making some changes, drinking less. Like I do think he is drinking less. But he's definitely not like cured or whatever it is. It's just interesting that he's able to control it, at least for cameras, like
but
for the show.
I disagree. I don't think he does control it. No, I don't. I think personally what I see, Shep is one of the few characters who's been on TV for, over a decade, and he has shown no growth whatsoever. None. Zero. I mean,
it's wild.
I need people to listen to this to understand how willfully you have to stick to your old behavior to prevent change and growth as you age. Like that's a commitment. So for me, I see what you're saying, but I just think that maybe it hasn't been filmed yet. Or, my prediction is we'll see later in the season him be bombed and being ridiculous. But listen, who knows? Who knows?
The one person I do think has shown some change, at least among the men, because they're all perpetually the same. I mean, Whitney's the exact same, is Austen. I do feel there has been growth from Austen. It may not be where we think he should be, but seeing how he is with Madison as like a friendship and being able to let go of, whatever they had in their past. And just genuinely be friends, be happy, be friendly with her husband, get gifts for her daughter. It's very sweet. And I feel like, even in his friendship with Craig, kind of bringing things to the table that he normally would have just never mentioned. He's trying to have conversations with Craig that are difficult, right? And I've seen some growth in him and I appreciate it. I really feel like he's trying to improve himself and
Yeah, I mean, I kind of felt that until I watched this episode. And I'll tell you what I saw in this episode. The Sally, Vanita, and Craig thing, like all those love triangles. So Sally is kind of interested in Austen, and Austen spent a lot of time with her. And then Madison told Austen's girlfriend, Audrey, that whatever. So it just started this whole thing. But what I saw this episode is Austen is saying how happy he is for things to be the way they are, to live far away from his girlfriend, to not have her live with him, to be footloose and fancy free. And she is not happy. She couldn't be more unhappy. Every time I hear her, she is complaining about the commute. She is complaining about the traffic. She made a statement about, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but like, I hate having to do this all the time. I think that Austen is bored. And what Madison, she said something here that I was like, oh, I think she's right. I think Austen chooses Audrey because he knows it's like the quote unquote healthy, mature, right decision. but I think he's bored, and that's what we're going to see later in the season. I think there's a part of him that wants to sabotage constantly and does sabotage constantly because, and I've said this since I've been watching Southern Charm, is that Austen had a sister die. They went on a walk together as a family. She literally fell off a cliff. She died. They were all there for that. And I think that permanently traumatized him in ways that I think maybe he's now more aware of because he's in therapy. But it is so common when you have a situation like that. For example, did you watch Amy Bradley is Missing?
No.
On Netflix? So it's the story about this girl who goes missing on a boat and her brother, and they were like 20 when it happened. And the brother in one confessional, he says, I never married and I never had kids because I think deep down I was always terrified because of what happened to my sister. I saw how it broke my parents to lose a child. And I think that in Charleston culture, what it means to settle down is to get married and to have kids. And I think Austen is 1,000% traumatized and is afraid to have a child. That's what I think.
I think he's also what I do feel like he's made growth though, like just having this relationship, having conversations with her just in general. Before he would avoid every conversation. I mean, she's telling him, I would rather you visit me more. I feel like there's not the same give and take. What's odd is that he has never had a serious conversation with her about their future. But I think he's choosing someone younger and less mature because he knows she won't be the one to bring it up, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Because he doesn't want to have he doesn't want to have conversations about like, what's the end game with this? Like, do I eventually move to you? Do you move to me? What happens? Whereas like Paige and Craig were constantly talking about the end game and like which way it would go.
But that's because Craig needed Paige to like keep him afloat.
Yeah.
They're like both clinging to things for reasons that they shouldn't.
Yeah, I think
and that's part of the problem. But I'm sorry.
But it's interesting to watch Austen be in this relationship where he thinks like the first 6 months of dating can continue over and over and over and over again. And that there doesn't have to be like any sort of forward movement, which is fine if that's what she wants. But that's not what most people want when they start dating. They want to date for a reason, to have a life partner. And he's just kind of like, well, why can't we just keep it like casual the way that we have the entire time, where we don't talk about our future and we don't have any conversations about sacrifice or who has to change what in order to make this work. So I just find it interesting.
It is interesting because at one of the last scenes, Austen was talking to Audrey because she was like, well, Madison told me that, this girl likes you. And you could tell, here's the thing, I don't know Audrey. I could tell she was very upset. Austen didn't seem to notice at all. And then she said something like, I just don't want us to start living separate lives. And he literally responded with, well, but everything's okay right now, so let's just enjoy it. And I'm like, that is part of the problem. These boys are perpetually, for different reasons, they don't want to grow up. They don't want to grow up. They don't want to either have the adult responsibilities or do it on their own. Craig wants a woman to help hold him up. Austen, it's totally different stuff. But it's like, this is why this isn't working for me, right? Because isn't that her saying unequivocally, like, I'm concerned, I'm not happy. And he's just like, well, let's enjoy the moment. Well, you can't just continue to enjoy the moment when someone's chronically upset about an issue, you know?
These men.
I know, Mandy, these men. Before we wrap up, was there anything else that we should address?
We talk about on my podcast, like Sally's obsession with guys and that she's willing to throw any friend under the bus in order to like seek a man. It's interesting how Rodrigo is friends with all these women, but like knows the faults. And so he's looking out for Venita, which I think is very sweet. And he's kind of like, hey, just so you know, like this is who Sally is. Right. And I think it's going to be interesting to see Sally and Charlie, who seem like they have been friends for a bit, to see how this changes now that they're on TV and they're being filmed, and that Charlie is getting the attention from men that Sally so desperately seeks. So it's just interesting to see how she's going to twist and all that so that she can be the one that they're all after. She also said something really interesting. He said, like, in order to become a wife, like she wants to be a wife, act like a wife, right? And she said, but how am I supposed to get a husband acting like a wife? Like basically being at, like what she thought of being a wife was like being at home in the kitchen cooking and baking, which was just so odd to me. I think what people
I'm so glad you brought this up.
I think what people say when they say, like, if you want it, act like it, is, you know, if you're trying to get men by like shaking your tits and going to a bar and getting drunk, like men may like that in the moment, but like that may not be who they want to settle down with. I think that like that's what that phrase is supposed to mean. Like just start acting more mature and like you're worth something. And so that the men chase after you. And then that's acting like a wife, right? Where like you have respect for yourself. I think that's it. But she's not getting what it means to have like self-respect and do what you want and be who you are. And then eventually someone meets you and decides they love you and want to be with you. You know what I mean? It's like she's trying to constantly like bend herself in some sort of pretzel to fit the mold of who she thinks a guy wants, rather than just being herself and having a guy meet her and like her as she is.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you brought this up, because when she said that the therapist said that, you can take that a couple different ways. But
Oh, was the therapist?
The therapist.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, my brain. I was like, oh, this is interesting. So here's what I surmise. Her therapist said, if you want to be a wife, act like a wife, which I was like, that's an interesting turn of phrase. But what we say and what people hear sometimes could be two different things.
I was going to say, I don't know if she said it the same way.
Right. And number two, to your point, what I imagine a therapist might say is if your goal is X, you have to behave congruent to get to X, right?
Yeah.
Like if you want to run a marathon, you can't just walk out of your house one day and say, I'm going to run a marathon. You have to train, you have to condition, you have to do all these things. And so if she wants to settle down, she needs to be doing certain things. But I think what's so interesting to your point is that she interpreted as, well, being a wife means you have to be home and whatever. And I'm like, listen, maybe in Charleston, that is what it means to be a wife, which is why maybe people are so unhappy, because it's not the 1950s anymore. Being a wife or a partner, or a spouse, a husband, it's not defined by those traditional roles anymore. Heads up to everyone listening to this. Your relationship can be whatever the hell you want it to be. And I think that people forget that they can make their own happiness, and they don't have to fall in this role. So I do hope to hear a little bit more about that. And I wonder what the therapist thought after she said that on TV too. I was like so curious about that whole thing, but we'll see if we get any more information.
That is so fascinating. Also, I find, and this is just my own observation, I don't know that this is accurate, but I feel like people who are in marriages that are like partnerships, where there is equal give and take, where the husband is able to take over childcare responsibilities and cooking responsibilities and cleaning responsibilities, and the wife is able to take out the trash. You know what I mean? Like fix things, like where there's just, and again, everyone has their own roles, but where there's not this expectation of gender roles, people seem on both sides happier and more fulfilled, because they have a lot more conversations about who is responsible for what, which day, and at what moment in their relationship. Whereas like, you know, I just started watching this season of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. I'm only one episode in, and it's very clear that what the issue is with the men is that like they have this idea of being in a partnership. It's their role to be the provider. And they're in these marriages and relationships where they're not the provider anymore. So it's like, well, if I'm not the provider, who am I?
Who am I?
And then the wife is like, well, if I am the provider, then who am I as a wife? And they're all trying to navigate this whole like change dynamic that was not the way it was when they met each other. Right. It was.
Right.
And I find,
what they're missing is that they're living a beautiful life. Their wives are making a bunch of money. They're stable. They're secure. They have these beautiful children, but they're so focused on those roles. But here's the thing I will say is that men specifically, tend to define or self-identify based on career historically. So when that is, when the rhetoric of a church or a religion, it kind of just solidifies that, it can make people really unhappy when those roles change. But what I can tell you is from doing couples therapy, family therapy, and being in my own relationship for 23 years, for sure, the people that are the happiest are those who talk, they meet each other's needs. And guess what? Our needs are always shifting. So if you're so like tunnel vision into a role, you're not going to be happy because those needs are always shifting and changing. So for example, my husband and I are like, he's sick this week. So I'm handling a little bit more of the household stuff. And when I was sick a couple weeks ago, he handled it. So it's really like let's talk about this. What do you need? What do you need? And let's meet each other's needs instead of being affixed to these roles. So
and people who are, I think, open to the change in roles are the ones that seem to be happier. That's what I'm trying to, I think.
Oh, for sure.
Get to.
Yeah.
That was where I was trying to land the plane, but I didn't quite get there.
You landed. No, you did. You just landed it, and you're right.
Because when you see people who are just so wedded to like very specific roles and are unadaptable, they seem less happy, including women, right? When they're like, well, I thought I had to do this, this, and this. And then now things shifted in my life and I actually I can't be with my kids as much anymore. And the husband's sort of like, well, I didn't expect to be with the kids so much. They seem less happy. And I just think the more open you are to shifts in roles and it not like having to be exactly the way that your parents may have, like, I grew up in a family with very traditional gender roles. Like my mom was in charge of the kids. She was in charge of the cooking. She was in charge of the cleaning. And my dad worked. And my mom worked too, but it was, different.
Sure. And I think your word is right, is adaptability. I think from what I've learned in clinical practice and in my own life is that you have to be adaptable to change. If we are rigid in our behaviors, in our expectations, in our roles, it definitely life just doesn't work like that, So, thank you, Mandy, so much. You landed the plane with such a great point. No, I'm so grateful you added that because I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. So as always, thank you for being here. Thank you for such a beautiful, stimulating conversation. And of course, tell everybody where they can hear part 1 of this pod and where they can find you.
Yes, you can listen anywhere that you get podcasts to Is This Real Life with Mandy Slutsker, and you can find me on Instagram at Mandy Slutsker.
And for those of you watching this video, I apologize that my face was just a giant sun for half of it, and it was wild to watch. But but you can find this video on my Patreon. You can find it on Spotify and on my YouTube. And Mandy, thank you so much.
Wait, do you want to hear a funny thing really quick? I'm about to go take Stassi out in the snow. And I posted a picture of Stassi, and Dana Weiland, who is Stassi Schroeder's mother, DM'd me and was like, oh my God, that looks like one of my pups. And then in the next story, I wrote Stassi, like my dad's showing Stassi like videos on YouTube or whatever. And she wrote back like, ha ha ha, like, I forgot your dog's name was Stassi.
Even though you told her that.
Because she was just like, she really likes dogs. And so she was like reacting to the pictures I posted of the dog. I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe Stassi Schroeder. Like, not only did Terry have to tell her this and I had to watch, she forgot that it happened.
And then you had to remind
And then all over again was like, oh my God.
Hey, I named my dog after your child. But you know what? If she really, which I know you're getting to know her, I know you're friendly with Terry, but you treat and love Stassi literally like.
Oh, I do.
Dana loves her child. Real Stassi.
Yeah.
So it's super fitting. You're like, no, this is literally my baby.
Well, and my dog has evolved, right, as Stassi Schroeder has evolved, which she was like a terror as a pup. She was lovely, but she would not cuddle or anything like that. She was busy and difficult, and I couldn't train her. She was 2.5. She just defied all training techniques until I got a special trainer because she knew she had free will. That was the problem. So it was like, come. And she's like, oh, no, I actually don't feel like coming. And so I'm just going to go the absolute other way. And then I'm like, here's food. And she's like, haha, I don't actually care about food. Joke's on you. That's not going to motivate me. And so it's like you're trying to motivate this dog to do what you want it to do. And she has no interest in pleasing you and nothing is motivating. So it was a really, really, really difficult. I had to like find someone. I was like, I have a terrier. Like, tell me how to train a terrier. And now she like comes when called. She's like so cuddly. She's very sweet. She's calmed down a little in her older age. And I'm just like, yeah, just like Sassy.
I mean, literally, it is uncanny. When you talk about it like that, you're like, man, that it was meant to be her name because that is exactly like what Stassi has become. She was unhinged as a person, and now she's like a wife, a mom, like doing reunions for Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. She's just like coming into her chill zone, just like your Stassi.
I think she just needed to be in a place where she felt in like a loving, safe relationship for her to truly mature and to get off TV to mature. And like now she's entering TV again on her own terms. And I appreciate that. Like, I think she said, like, I will never go back on TV if I don't have some sort of producer credit. Like, I'm never going to let anyone manipulate how I show up, to be different than what I believe to be true. And she was just like, we forgot she was with Jax for 2 years when we first saw her on TV. And I think that would make anyone unhinged. So I feel like we need to give her a little bit of grace for how she behaved because she was just reacting to the circumstances she was in.
I mean, that's a super fair point. And it's funny you bring that up because I did think the other day, I was like, how did she stay with this man for 2 years? But, maybe
she was young. She was like 22 or something, 23 when she started filming the show. So she met him when she was like 20 or 21. I mean, that's a really young age to be in a relationship, and he's older. So I think she's kind of like was deferential to him a bit. Right. And, and
then her job depended on it kind of at a point, so. All right. Well, that was a fun interjection at the end. Thank you for that.
I just thought that was so funny when she's like, I like commenting how cute my dog is and then like forgot that its name was Stassi.
I love that.
Shout out to Dana. She's amazing. She's a lovely lady.
Shout out to Dana and Terry. And if you didn't listen to the up, hopefully you did, but Mandy talked about her experience at BravoCon, and we're talking about Katie Maloney's mom and Stassi Schroeder's mom, Dana and Terry. So listen to that if you didn't already. Thank you, Mandy. Adore you. Can't wait till our next M&M hour. Take care, everybody. Disclaimer. Posts are not intended to diagnose, treat, or provide medical advice. Your Bish therapist is for entertainment and informational purposes only. The podcast, my opinions, and posts are my own and not associated with past or present employers, any organizations, Bravo TV, Greyheart Productions, or any other television network. The information in YBT podcast and on its social media is provided for general informational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose or treat. Please do not act or refrain from acting based on anything you read, see, or hear on YBT podcast or associated social media. Communicating with YBT via email and or social media does not form a therapeutic alliance. Melissa, operator of YBT, is unable to provide any therapeutic advice, treatment, or feedback.